The massive Imperial survey ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Its golden hull gleamed under the distant sunlight as it began its standard first contact protocols. For thousands of years, the Galactic Empire had followed the same procedure: observe, contact, and welcome new species into their vast civilization. They had never failed. Captain Marcus stood on the bridge of Earth's defense station, Guardian 1, watching the alien vessel with a mix of wonder and concern. The station's sensors showed the ship was larger than anything humans had ever built, nearly the size of a small city. "Sir, they're broadcasting something," the communications officer reported, his fingers dancing over the controls. It's in multiple frequencies, languages we've never heard before." Marcus nodded. Humanity had prepared for this moment for centuries. "Send our universal greeting package. Let's show them we're civilized." In the Imperial vessel, High Commander Dale watched the primitive space station with mild amusement. These humans had barely reached their own moon, their technology laughably basic compared to Imperial standards. The translation computers were already decoding their simple binary transmissions. "High Commander," his second-in-command announced, "their message contains warnings. They request we maintain a specific distance and follow their approach protocols." Dale laughed, the sound echoing across the bridge. "Warnings from primitives. Continue approach. Show them the might of the Empire." Back on Guardian 1, alarms began blaring. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted, "they're ignoring our warning broadcasts. They've crossed the safety line." Marcus felt his heart race. Humanity had developed their first contact protocols, based on centuries of war and mistrust. They knew the importance of clear boundaries and mutual respect. These aliens were ignoring both. "Final warning," Marcus ordered. "All frequencies, all languages we know. Make it clear." The Imperial ship continued its approach, its golden hull now filling the station's viewport. Dale watched with satisfaction as his ship demonstrated proper Imperial authority. These humans would learn their place in the galactic hierarchy. The warning shot from Guardian 1 took the Imperial ship by surprise. A small defensive missile detonated half a kilometer from their hull, causing minimal damage but sending a clear message. Dale's amusement turned to rage. "They dare," he snarled. "They dare attack an Imperial vessel. Show them their mistake." What happened next would change galactic history forever. The Imperial ship fired what they considered a warning shot, a low-powered energy beam meant to disable primitive weapon systems, but they didn't understand human engineering. The beam hit Guardian 1's reinforced hull at precisely the wrong angle, triggering a cascading power failure that ripped through the station. Marcus watched in horror as emergency lights flooded the bridge red. "Evacuate. All personnel to escape pods." He stayed at his post, broadcasting one final message to Earth. "First contact protocol has failed. Hostile intent confirmed. God help us all." The station's destruction was visible from Earth, a bright flash that marked the beginning of humanity's first interstellar war. Admiral James Stone, watching from Earth Command, clenched his fists as the reports flooded in. "Send the message," he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of history. "To all human colonies and ships. This is not a drill. We are at war." In orbit, Dale prepared to send his own message to the Empire. These primitives had dared to fire upon an Imperial vessel. Their punishment would be swift and absolute. He didn't understand the strange warning that arrived from Earth's surface. "You have violated human space and destroyed a defensive installation. We have 3,000 years of warfare in our history. We have spent centuries preparing for this moment. This is your only warning. Run. Run while you still can." Dale dismissed the message as primitive bravado. The Empire had never lost a war in 10,000 years. These humans would learn their place or be destroyed. He couldn't know that this dismissal would be remembered as the Empire's greatest mistake. Humanity had tried to warn them. Now they would learn why humans were the only species in known space that had the concept of total war. The Imperial Council chamber gleamed with golden light as High Commander Dale presented his report. Huge screens showed the destruction of the human space station, which he displayed with pride. The 500 council members watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. These primitives dared to fire upon an Imperial vessel, Dale announced. I recommend immediate subjugation. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Victory will be swift. On the central throne, the Grand Emperor raised a hand. And what of their warning message? Dale played the human transmission. The council chamber filled with laughter at the mention of 3,000 years of warfare. Ridiculous, one council member said. The Empire has known peace for 10,000 years. What could these primitives teach us of war? Meanwhile, on Earth, General Robert West stood before the United Earth Defense Council. The room was dark, lit only by screens showing the approaching Imperial fleet. They've rejected all attempts at peaceful contact, he reported. They demand our immediate surrender. How many ships? Someone asked. 300 capital ships. They're calling it a small punishment fleet. West's face showed no fear. They think it's enough to conquer Earth. They don't understand who they're dealing with. The Defense Council activated humanity's war protocols. Sleeper ships hidden in asteroid belts powered up. Underground factories that had waited decades for this moment began production. Every human colony activated their defense systems. The Imperial fleet arrived 2 days later. Dale watched Earth's small defensive fleet with amusement. 100 ships, much smaller than Imperial vessels, waited in formation. Pathetic, he said. Open fire when in range. Show them true power. The first battle of the war lasted exactly 6 minutes, but it didn't go as Dale expected. The human ships scattered before the Imperial fleet like dust in the wind. Dale laughed at their apparent cowardice. Until the warning started. Sir, detecting small objects approaching at high speed. Ignore them, Dale ordered. Focus on the fleeing ships. The small objects were Earth's first surprise. Stealth nuclear missiles, hidden in the debris field of the destroyed station. They detonated in the middle of the Imperial formation. 20 ships disappeared in flashes of atomic fire. Impossible, Dale shouted. They're using primitive atomic weapons. This violates all galactic conventions. The human ships suddenly turned back, attacking from multiple directions. They didn't fight like any species the Empire had ever encountered. They attacked in small groups, striking weak points, retreating before the Empire could respond. In the Defense Council room, West watched the battle displays. Begin Phase 2, he ordered. Across the solar system, hidden missile platforms activated. Thousands of missiles launched from bases on Mars, Europa, and dozens of asteroids. The Imperial fleet found itself under attack from all directions. Dale watched in horror as his punishment fleet fell into chaos. Imperial ships had no point defense systems. They had never needed them before. But humans had spent centuries preparing for space warfare. Every possible strategy had been planned, every tactic considered. Retreat, Dale ordered. Regroup at the rally point. Only half his fleet escaped the solar system. The Empire had just lost more ships in one battle than in the last 1,000 years combined. Dale's hands shook as he prepared his report to the Council. On Earth, celebrations were quiet and brief. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. West met with his commanders, their faces grim but determined. The Empire needs to understand something, West told them. We don't want this war. We tried to warn them. But if they want to learn why humans are the only species that developed the concept of mutual assured destruction, we'll teach them. In the Imperial Palace, the Grand Emperor received Dale's report of defeat. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire faced an enemy that didn't follow their rules of warfare. An enemy that had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. As emergency meetings were called and battle plans drawn up, the Emperor remembered the humans' warning. Run while you still can. Perhaps, he thought, They should have listened. Captain Linda watched from the bridge of her small stealth ship as the massive Imperial supply fleet passed through the asteroid belt. Her vessel, barely larger than an ancient Earth submarine, was powered down to avoid detection. 5 other human ships waited nearby, hidden in the shadows of various asteroids. "Remember," she whispered to her crew, though the enemy couldn't possibly hear them. "Wait for the signal." The Imperial supply fleet moved with complete confidence. After their initial defeat at Earth, they had learned to protect their warships with point defense systems. But supply ships. The Empire thought they were too far from Earth to worry about attacks here. They were wrong. Linda pressed a button on her command chair. Across the asteroid belt, lights flashed in a specific pattern. To the Empire's sensors, they looked like normal asteroid reflections. To the hidden human ships, it was the attack signal. 6 small ships powered up simultaneously, engines burning hot as they launched themselves at the Imperial supply fleet. The enemy didn't detect them until they were almost on top of them. "Humans," the Imperial commander shouted. "How did they get this far into our territory?" He tried to organize a defense, but his supply ships were slow and poorly armed. Linda's ship struck first, its railguns firing depleted uranium shells that tore through Imperial hull plating like paper. The other human ships attacked from different angles, creating chaos in the Imperial formation. "Sir," Linda's tactical officer reported, "they're trying to call for help." She smiled. "Too late for that. Launch the drones." Each human ship released a swarm of small automated drones, another human innovation the Empire had never seen before. The drones attached themselves to Imperial ships, cutting through hulls with plasma torches, destroying engines and communications arrays. The battle lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, the entire Imperial supply fleet was either destroyed or disabled. Linda ordered her crews to board the disabled ships. "Take anything useful," she commanded. "Engineering specs, navigation data, and especially their quantum communication systems. Then plant the charges." The Empire had never faced an enemy that stole their technology and turned it against them. They had never needed to protect against such tactics. Their arrogance was becoming their greatest weakness. Back at the Imperial capital, the Grand Admiral faced the Emperor with disturbing news. "These humans, they don't fight like any species we've encountered. They strike from hiding. They steal our technology. They fight without honor." The Emperor watched tactical displays showing dozens of similar raids across Imperial space. "Explain to me," he said slowly, "how these primitives are now operating thousands of light years from their homeworld." The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans had been preparing for space warfare long before they met the Empire. They had hidden bases and supply caches throughout what the Empire considered their secure territory. While the Empire watched Earth, humanity struck from 100 different directions. On her ship, Linda received new orders from Earth Command. The next phase was beginning. Her crew had already adapted the stolen Imperial technology, improving it in ways the Empire had never considered. "They think we're savages," she told her crew as they prepared for their next raid. "They think we don't understand their technology. But humans have something the Empire lost long ago. Creativity born from conflict. We know how to improvise, adapt, and overcome." Her tactical officer spoke up. "Captain, we're picking up Imperial communications." "There." He paused, surprised. "They're starting to fear us." Linda nodded. The Empire was learning what every human knew. The most dangerous enemy isn't the biggest or strongest, but the one who refuses to fight by your rules. Far away, in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor received reports of more raids, more stolen technology, more unconventional tactics that his military had no answer for. The Empire had forgotten the art of war during their 10,000 years of peace. But humans had turned it into a science. "Perhaps," the Emperor muttered, watching another supply fleet disappear from his tactical displays, "we should have taken their warning more seriously." The Imperial Science Council gathered in emergency session, their faces pale as they reviewed the latest reports. On the main screen, images showed captured Imperial technology, modified in ways they had never imagined, ways that should have been impossible. How? The head scientist asked, his voice shaking. How are they adapting our technology so quickly? In a secret facility on Mars, Chief Engineer Bill looked at his team's latest creation with pride. They had taken a captured Imperial energy weapon and completely rebuilt it, combining it with human missile technology. The result was something entirely new, a weapon that could bypass Imperial shields completely. Send word to command, Bill ordered. Project Breakthrough is ready for testing. The Empire had always assumed their technology was too advanced for primitives to understand. They had never encountered a species like humans, a species that had spent centuries developing different technologies, approaching problems from completely different angles. On the front lines, an Imperial battle fleet faced off against a much smaller human force. The Imperial commander felt confident. His ships had been upgraded with new defenses against human tactics. He knew all their tricks now. Or so he thought. The human ships launched what looked like normal missiles. Imperial point defense systems shot them down easily. The Imperial commander smiled, until the destroyed missiles released clouds of strange particles. Status report, he demanded as his ship's systems began failing. Unknown technology, his science officer shouted. The particles, they're eating through our hull. They're self-replicating. The humans had combined Imperial energy technology with Earth's nanotechnology. The result was a weapon the Empire had no defense against. The entire Imperial fleet was consumed in minutes, transformed into raw materials for the nanites to use. In the Imperial Palace, the Grand Emperor watched recordings of the battle in horror. How? He whispered. How are they creating such weapons? His advisors had no answer. The Empire had specialized in one technological path for thousands of years. But humans? Humans had developed hundreds of different technologies, each solving problems in different ways. When they captured Imperial tech, they didn't just copy it. They'd reimagined it completely. Back on Mars, Bill's team was already working on their next project. They had discovered that Imperial shield technology could be modified using principles from Earth's old particle accelerators. The result would be a weapon that could tear holes in space itself. We never wanted this war, Bill told his team as they worked. But the Empire needs to understand something. Humans don't just adapt. We innovate. We create. And most importantly, we never, ever give up. The Imperial Science Council's next report to the Emperor was dire. Humans weren't just stealing their technology. They were improving it, combining it with their own tech in ways the Empire had never considered, ways that terrify them. These primitives have advanced more in 6 months of war than we have in 1,000 years of peace, one scientist reported. They're not just learning our technology. They're evolving it. A month later, the first human ships equipped with space-folding drives appeared in Imperial space. The Empire had always used pre-calculated hyperspace routes. Humans? They found a way to bend space itself, allowing them to appear anywhere, anytime. The Empire began to understand a terrible truth. They hadn't been advancing for 10,000 years. They had been stagnating. Meanwhile, humanity's history of constant conflict had created a species that could adapt and innovate at terrifying speeds. In his lab, Bill looked at the latest test results with satisfaction. Send word to command, he said. Tell them Phase 2 is ready. The Empire thought we were primitive. Let's show them what primitives can do when pushed into a corner. Across Imperial space, reports flooded in of human ships appearing from nowhere, using weapons that defied Imperial science. The Empire had started this war thinking humans were primitives. Now they faced a species that took their own technology and turned it into something new, something terrifying. The Empire was about to learn another human concept they had never encountered before: exponential growth. Admiral John stood before the holographic map of imperial space, studying the network of supply lines that kept the Empire's massive military running. For 10,000 years, these trade routes had never been seriously threatened. That was about to change. The Empire thinks war is about armies, he told his commanders. They're wrong. War is about logistics. On an imperial core world, panic spread through the streets. No food deliveries had arrived for 3 days. The population had never experienced shortage before. They didn't know how to handle it. "Where are the supply ships?" an imperial governor demanded. His aide trembled. "The humans. They're attacking our supply lines. Not just the military ones. All of them." The Empire had built its civilization on absolute stability. Every world specialized in specific products, depending on constant trade. They never considered what would happen if those trade routes were disrupted. In deep space, Commander Allen watched his stealth fleet's latest success. They had destroyed another Imperial supply convoy, but this time they had a new mission. His ships broadcast a message to every nearby Imperial world. "Your Empire can't protect you. They can't feed you, but we can offer you peace. All you have to do is stay neutral in this war." The Empire had never faced economic warfare before. They didn't understand why humans targeted civilian supply ships instead of military vessels. They didn't understand that humans knew how to break an enemy's will to fight. In the Imperial Palace, reports of civil unrest flooded in from dozens of worlds. The Grand Emperor faced his first economic crisis in living memory. "How?" he demanded. "How are they everywhere at once?" The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans had studied ancient Earth wars. They knew that even the strongest enemy could be defeated if their supply lines were cut. While the Empire's mighty fleets patrolled empty space, human raiders struck at the heart of their economy. Back on Earth, Admiral John received reports from across Imperial space. "Phase 3 is working," his intelligence officer reported. 20 Imperial worlds have already declared neutrality. They're more afraid of starving than they are of the Empire. John nodded. "The Empire built a perfect system," he said. "And that's their weakness. Perfect systems are often the most fragile. They never learned how to handle disruption." On the Imperial capital world, the first food riots broke out. The Empire had forgotten something humans learned long ago. Hungry people don't care about glory or power. They care about survival. Commander Allen's fleet struck again, this time broadcasting a different message. "Your Empire has failed you. They promised protection, but they can't even feed you. Look how easily their perfect system breaks." The Empire scrambled to adapt, but 10,000 years of peace had left them unprepared. They had no backup plans, no alternative supply routes, no way to handle widespread disruption. In a secret meeting room, Imperial trade lords faced a harsh reality. Their perfect economy was collapsing. Worlds that had been dependent on trade for millennia were suddenly demanding independence, demanding the right to produce their own food, their own goods. "These humans," one lord said, "they're not just fighting our military. They're destroying our way of life." Admiral John reviewed the latest reports with satisfaction. The Empire's mighty fleets were scattered, trying desperately to protect trade routes that stretched across thousands of light years. Meanwhile, human ships appeared and disappeared at will, striking where they were least expected. "Send the next message," he ordered. "Tell the Empire that this can all stop. They just have to do one thing: surrender." The Empire had never surrendered in its history, but they had also never faced an enemy who understood that the biggest empires could be brought down not by fighting their armies, but by breaking their economy. As more worlds declared neutrality and the Empire's perfect system continued to crack, they began to learn the hardest lesson yet. Sometimes the strongest-looking structure is the easiest to break, if you know where to push. Fear. The Empire had forgotten what it felt like. For 10,000 years, they had been the ones causing fear, not feeling it. But now, as reports came in from across their territory, Imperial leaders felt true fear for the first time. On the bridge of his flagship, Imperial Commander Ross stared in disbelief at his tactical display. Another Imperial fleet had vanished completely. Not destroyed in battle, just gone. Humans were using their new space-folding technology to make entire Imperial battle groups disappear. Where do they take them? His officers whispered among themselves. Nobody had answers. In the Imperial Palace, the Grand Emperor received dire news. 3 more core worlds had surrendered to the humans without a fight. Their message was always the same. We choose survival over pride. How? The Emperor demanded. How are they turning our own people against us? The answer came from an unexpected source, an Imperial psychologist who had studied human behavior. They understand fear, she explained. Not just how to feel it, but how to use it. They know that imagination is more terrifying than reality. Across Imperial space, stories spread about the humans. Stories of ships that appeared from nowhere, using weapons that defied physics. Stories of entire fleets vanishing into space-time rifts. Stories of worlds that resisted being reduced to atomic ash. Most weren't true, but that didn't matter. The humans understood something the Empire had forgotten. Fear spreads faster than truth. In his command center, General Robert West reviewed the latest psychological warfare reports. The Empire is breaking, his intelligence officer reported. Their military units are starting to refuse orders. Some are even deserting. West nodded. They built their empire on absolute obedience, he said. They never learned how to handle doubt. And doubt, once it takes root, spreads like a virus. On an imperial frontier world, a massive protest erupted outside the governor's palace. The crowd wasn't angry. They were terrified. They had heard stories about what happened to worlds that fought against the humans. Surrender, they shouted. We don't want to disappear like the Third Fleet. The Empire had never faced internal rebellion before. They didn't know how to handle their own citizens turning against them. Their perfect system of control was built on unquestioning loyalty. Now that loyalty was turning to fear. Back on the imperial capital, the Emperor watched as his council members argued among themselves. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight to the last ship. But in their eyes, he saw something new. Fear. The humans, one council member said, they're not just in our territory. They're in our heads. How do we fight an enemy that makes us doubt everything we believe? Human intelligence officers monitored Imperial communications with satisfaction. The Empire's military structure was collapsing. Units refused to go on patrol, fearing they would be the next to vanish. Supply ships refused to leave port, knowing they were likely targets. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Stone prepared the final phase of the war. The Empire is learning what every human knows, he told his staff. Fear is the most powerful weapon ever created. The Empire tried to maintain control. They executed deserters. They punished worlds that surrendered. But their actions only spread more fear. Every harsh response made more worlds consider surrender. They're destroying themselves, West observed as he watched Imperial forces turn on each other. Their own actions are doing more damage than our weapons. The Empire had never understood human psychology. They didn't understand that fear could break even the strongest warrior. That doubt could destroy even the most loyal servant. As the Empire's grand fleets sat paralyzed in their ports, as more worlds declared their independence, as their perfect system crumbled around them, they finally understood the truth. They had not just lost a war of weapons and technology. They had lost a war of will and psychology. The Empire had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. Now they were learning what it meant to be afraid. The grand imperial throne room was silent. Gone were the usual crowds of nobles and officials. Instead, just 3 humans stood before the Emperor: Admiral Stone, General West, and Engineer Bill. They had come to accept the Empire's surrender. 10,000 years, the Emperor said quietly. 10,000 years of power, broken in less than 1 year by a species we thought primitive. Stone stepped forward, his voice firm but not cruel. We tried to warn you. War isn't about who has the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons. It's about who understands their enemy better. Around them, the imperial capital showed signs of the war's impact. The once perfect streets were dirty from lack of maintenance. People looked hungry, not starving, but they had learned what it meant to have less than they wanted. Your terms, the Emperor asked. West unfolded a digital display. First, independence for any world that wants it. Second, sharing of technology, both ways. Third, and most important, the Empire must change how it approaches new species. The Emperor looked surprised at the simplicity of the terms. He had expected humans to demand revenge, to break the Empire completely. Instead, they offered a path forward. In orbit above the capital, human and Imperial ships floated side by side. Imperial crews watched in amazement as human engineers helped repair their ships, explaining how they had modified Imperial technology. "We don't want to destroy the Empire," Bill explained to a group of Imperial scientists. "We want to help it grow, to learn, to understand why diversity of thought is more powerful than uniformity." The Emperor signed the peace treaty with shaking hands. 10,000 years of history changed with a single gesture. But as he looked at the humans, he saw something he hadn't expected. Respect. "You could have destroyed us completely," he said. "Why didn't you?" Stone smiled. "Because that's another thing the Empire needs to learn. The strongest victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's turning them into an ally." Across Imperial space, change spread quickly. Worlds that chose independence began building their own cultures, their own ways of life. Those that stayed with the Empire helped create a new system, one that valued adaptation and innovation over rigid stability. In the Imperial Science Academy, human teachers worked alongside Imperial scientists. They taught not just technology, but new ways of thinking. How to question, how to experiment, how to fail and learn from failure. "Your empire stopped growing," Bill told his Imperial students. "Not in size, but in thought. You forgot that the universe has infinite possibilities, infinite ways of solving problems." The Emperor created a new council, one that included representatives from Earth and the independent worlds. Their first task, writing new protocols for first contact with other species. "We must remember this lesson," the Emperor announced to his people. "Strength isn't just about power. It's about understanding, about respecting those who are different from us." 1 year after the surrender, Admiral Stone stood on the observation deck of Earth's new embassy on the Imperial capital. Below him, the city had changed. Imperial and human architecture mixed together. People from both civilizations walked the streets, learning from each other. "Did we do the right thing?" West asked, joining him at the window. "Showing mercy." Stone nodded. "We didn't just win a war. We helped an entire civilization grow. That's the kind of victory that lasts." In the shipyards orbiting the capital, human and Imperial engineers worked together, combining their technologies in new ways. The results were ships more advanced than either civilization had created alone. The Empire learned valuable lessons from their defeat. They learned that peace doesn't mean stagnation, that strength comes in many forms, that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons, but the one who thinks differently from you. And most importantly, they learned to listen when a newly discovered species tried to warn them. Run while you still can. Because sometimes, those who appear primitive might just understand war better than those who have forgotten its cost.